So next up, it's going to be Erik Rose, and he's going to tell us about constructive code reviews. Please welcome him warmly.
Welcome. Thanks so much for filling this big room. This is going to be about how to run code reviews so you build the best possible product, but also build people up and build yourself up while doing it. So code reviews used to have this connotation of sitting in a stale conference room, pointing at stale code with stale long sticks. Modern code review is still stale, but generally asynchronous and web-based, and so we have all these advantages with it. You can take your time and do it whenever you want. But then there are still some disadvantages. Like we lose rather the ability to build rapport face-to-face. I'm going to offer some suggestions on how to overcome this and other disadvantages and get the most out of a very valuable practice. I've been through hundreds of code reviews, both giving and receiving. I've worked my whole career almost in open source of various kinds, where reviews or not, we never stop arguing about code. You may recognize my name from such open source libraries as Parsimonious, More Itertools, Blessings. We're always arguing about code on those things. I've been with Mozilla for 7 years, where everything we do is open source and goes through code review. So I've also spent a lot of time mentoring interns, junior devs, showing them how to review and be reviewed. The goals of a good review are 3. Build a good product, and this is, code review kind of fills the role of ensuring that the thing works beyond what our tools and our tests can tell us by rubbing a second brain over it. Rubbing a second brain over it also ensures that the code is understandable to people who didn't write it. Second, we build excellent programmers. We spread knowledge of the code base, like, well, you re-implemented this, but there's a routine over here in the utils module that does it. We spread raw competence, like, well, hey, did you know about generator expressions? And we can make this lazy and not concretize the whole list all at once. And we spread the love of the craft of programming. I mean, really, what an amazing privilege it is to program. What could be more creative than not only authoring a thing like an author of human text does, but having it run with a life of its own? Wow! I want to spread that joy to as many people as possible. And then third, in code review, you build yourself. Whether it's working with volunteer contribs, users, clients, or paying customers, it's easy for their demands to build up and make you feel like you don't control your own time, like you're just guilty all the time. I should really be working harder and harder. And I'll give you some tools to avoid burning out on that. Now, of course, the opposite of these good things can happen. You can waste time nitpicking, you can tear people down, or you can burn yourself out through failure to set and enforce personal boundaries. And this is a real problem because coding is creative work, and creative work is powered by enthusiasm. This is particularly true of open source. Even when it comes with a paycheck, we are an intrinsically motivated crowd, especially the kinds of people who come to PyCon, right, and kind of open source people. I make my living doing this, but I don't get paid to program. I see it as I get paid so I can spend my time programming, rather than getting money some other way. Now, the creative spark is a fragile thing, and it's all too easy to snuff it out in people. If you're lucky, and this is the best case, they'll quit. If you're unlucky, they will hang around, and they'll write bad code. So how do we preserve, or even fan brighter, this creative spark? We do it through equal parts truth and kindness. You'll see that everything I say today is going to be motivated by one or the other of these, because after all, the thing has to run on a machine made of metal. Can't argue with reality. But on the other hand, we're all these squishy, emotional beings, and we need a lift sometimes. So let's start with some truth. The clarity of explanation. As you're looking through the code, what did you find? This comment is self-descriptive. A better comment would have actually explained what happened. Okay, well, like this could happen temporarily, and it moves to the next thing, and it goes through this routine, and it gets caught up in the gears, and we ended up with a use after free, and we could have a security hole. Nah. Specific is good, but not sufficient. We also need to be durable. Our comments need to be durable over time and over code base change. So if I were to have a link in there and point off to something on the master branch, and we did this review a month later, the master branch has moved, man. Those lines of code, they're all over the place now. People have added, people have deleted. If you're going to link to a specific commit. We also have to be durable over what time they're going to be looking at it. I mean, so that month has gone by again. If my comment said, hey, remember when we talked about yesterday? Yeah, do that. Not helpful. Remember yesterday when we talked about it in the chat room? Maybe also not helpful. Not everybody keeps chat logs. Say what you said in the chat room. Remember we talked about that thing in the free after whatever, and then it would be good. In fact, heck, if somebody comes back to me a month after I made a comment and said, hey, what did you mean by that? So most review systems are web-based, for better or worse, so why not at least use the affordances that the web gives you? Most of these systems have code formatting for code snippets, so learn it. And you can use that same thing to paste in REPL sessions. Python has a lovely interactive interpreter. You can paste stuff in there. You can say, well, I ran your procedure on the number 3 and it exploded, and look, see. You can have links, after all. This is a big hypertext. Links to specific commits, remember. Links to relevant documentation. And these kinds of more, I don't want to use the word specific again, but language neutral comments are really nice because for some people, English is not a first language. Some people don't know each other well and can't interpret your hand-wavy comments or take your sarcasm. Some people are new to the project and need the extra context that these pointers provide. And some people just haven't had their morning coffee. Now sometimes in the course of a review, comments go back, comments go forth, and you find yourself talking past each other. You're just not getting your point across. In those cases, you can up the game to a higher bandwidth medium, like a video call or an audio call, or heaven forbid, pick up the telephone if they still know what those are. And don't just do it any old time, interrupt them out of their engineering day. Agree at a time in advance and make your call. Sometimes your time zones are different. And whatever you do afterwards, be sure to write down the result, because some people are not in the conversation. And it gets worse as time passes and no one remembers the conversation. Clarity of explanation has a little brother, clarity of expectation. Be clear not only about what you found, but what you're asking the person to do about it, and how much you care. Not such a great comment, yet again, but if we say, all right, I like to do this, but it doesn't need to hold things up, it's not a showstopper. That's great. And in fact, I bias toward merging things in quickly and not continuing to nitpick and nitpick and nitpick, because after all, if it's better than it was, why not let everybody enjoy that better? You can always put off the polish, unless it's a security hole or it's a typo that would take longer to file than to fix. What other wonderful things do we have? We have the wonderful GitHub reviews, which are a relatively new feature, and they let you be more kind of enumeratedly explicit about, I'm just saying, or do I actually require this change in order for me to, in good conscience, approve this? Bias toward, I'm just saying. That's my opinion. And then at last, when I'm done reviewing a patch, I like to be even more explicit about my expectations by saying, that's all I see. With those changes, I think this is ready to merge. That lets them know I'm done, lets me know I'm done if I come back and look at it later, and it ends with a little note of encouragement, a little bit of kindness. Once we have those two great truth-bringing clarities in place, we can move on to some kindness. Now, none of us likes to be criticized, so code review is this really kind of unnatural act. You're asking for critical feedback. It's a really bizarre sort of thing. And our human tendency when critiqued is to react, and if you scan somebody's amygdala, you find it reacts in the same way as if you had thrown like a log at their head. It's like a physical attack. You go, oh, don't critique my code. I love my code. So even when you don't take the time to really softly wordsmith things, it's easy for people to take offense and things to get out of control, and you have bad faith going back and forth. And so since nobody does have time to wordsmith every little comment, here are some quick hacks that impart tact without requiring you to be Shakespeare. The simplest of these is the humble question mark. Thank you, Dr. Evil. There's no point returning path results when there's more than one term. A little stern, maybe a little arrogant. Versus, can you remind me of some use cases for returning path results when there's more than one term? Yeah, it's a little more inviting, a little more open. And this is an actual review that I did with my intern a couple of summers ago. And in this case, there was a little bonus in that it let me save face, because there's totally use cases for that were really prominent. A second bonus is oftentimes the question mark will activate the Socratic method. Imagine a review that would say, hey, what if we had another thread going here that wrote to this variable? Oh, says the other person. Oh, maybe we could have a race condition, and then maybe, yes, I see. But then what if there was sensitive data? And okay, I'll go fix that. So now maybe you've got your point across. Maybe you've taught somebody something, and you've done it together. You, we, and this. So if you say you a lot, it feels like an attack a lot. If you do it this way, you're going to mess it up, you idiot. Versus if we are doing it, we're building something together. You know, if we divide 8 by 4, we have 2 in a very textbooky kind of way. And if that's too textbooky for you, you can always keep it about the code and say, well, this casting will behave thus. Tac number 3 is the good old complement. Of course, there's the old trick. If you're going to say, if you have to say something critical, say something complimentary before and afterward, a little compliment sandwich. That helps cushion the blow. The best time for compliments, I find, is early, to set the tone. And I like to compliment the spirit of the patch before I look at it. I like to say, oh, wow, look at this feature you implemented. I'm really excited to get it. I know our users are going to be excited. Let me take a look. And I'm able to make this positive comment because I haven't seen the code yet. A favorite of mine is, oh, thank you so much for refactoring that scary mess that I wrote last week. And compliments can, of course, go both ways. Hey, thanks for catching that, reviewer. Good catch. Ooh, I didn't know about that. Ooh, you saved a big bug. Good job. Tac number 4 is humor. A couple of cute kitties always improve somebody's day. Mozilla's reviews in particular seem to be awash in animated GIFs lately, and it keeps things lighthearted and fun. And this should be fun, right? We get to be creative, we get to make stuff, we get to sit in a comfy chair and press buttons all day in an air-conditioned room. This is a good gig. So question marks, you, we, this, compliments, and humor. These are some tact hacks we can use to soften our critiques. Now, aside from being harsh, let us see some other anti-patterns that reviews can fall into. Have you ever submitted a 1,000-line patch? Have you ever gotten this in response? The only solution to this is to make these long patches somehow less dreadful. Because somebody looked at this and said, ugh, it's fine, it's fine. The best contributors to my projects, the ones that I end up handing the reins over to eventually, submit patches that are a pleasure to review, even if they're long. And the way they do this, these champion committers, is their pull request comment, the one that encompasses the entire patch, is a couple of paragraphs long. It's like the abstract to an academic paper. It says, here's the problem I approached, I thought about this alternative, and then I chose this alternative because of this. I'm like, okay, great, that's totally easy for me. You took another 5 minutes and saved me reverse engineering the state of your entire brain and getting it wrong. So, good use of team time. And they have long commit messages too. These long commit, more IterTools project is, IterTools-y thing, so performance matters. And some of my champion committers have put benchmark results right there in the commit message, like, hey, look, it's 5% faster. Oh, okay, great, I can just hit merge. I can run your example and say yes. Their commits are small and logical. They do one thing. First I fixed the formatting, and then I added this routine I needed, and then I implemented this user-facing feature using it. And finally, they comment code where they couldn't make it clear in a different way. They have great doc strings on everything, because nothing's ever obvious. You may think it's obvious, it's totally not obvious. And they name things well, routines and objects and attributes and such. When you get a 1,000-line patch without these things, do not by any means feel guilty about asking for them. It is going to take less time, I promise, for that person to clean it up than it would take for you, again, to try to get inside their head magically and figure it out. And of course, the opposite is also true. When you submit a patch, use this as a checklist. Now, sometimes you're in the heat of a good hack, right? And you're not really proceeding block by block from small structured commit to small structured commit. That's just not reality. Sometimes you need to make a large sketch of a big portion of the program just to flesh an idea out or see if something is even plausible. And in those cases, you can use a tool like getx. This is the Mac one. Getk does similar things. It's GTK based, so runs anywhere, and I'm sure there are others. And these let you, in Git anyhow, stage, let me not use jargon, they let you break up changes after the fact into commits. These lines go in this commit, this line goes in that commit, these lines go in that one. This is a thing called interactive staging, if you want to read about it more. And there is a command line interface to this, but it is horrible and should be avoided because it's this maniacal 20 questions thing that's hard to back out of. It's very modal. Just get the clicky thing. You'd be much better off. The other thing these tools help with is they show you your diffs. You should totally read your diffs every time before you submit, before you commit even. I mean, who would give somebody a non-trivial piece of writing without ever proofreading it? That's silly. No one would do that. Caught so many print statements and debugger breakpoints with these things, it's not even funny. And because we spend so much of our time looking at diffs, consequently, it's hugely worth it to get a diff viewer that you like. I find the unified diff, red and green Christmas tree kind of diff stuff, I find that kind of hard to grok after it gets past a certain complexity. I have to use a part of my lexical brain to say, well, red means deleted and green means added. And that's brain power I don't have anymore to think what the code means. So I like something like a file merge on the Mac, and this is a free thing. It comes with Xcode. I love it because of the Bezier curves. It's a little thing, but it has an outsized effect on me. Like, this line balloons into those lines, and these collapse into those, and I don't need to use any lexical power at all. All this old Next Step stuff is great. It's from 1996, and a whole different operating system. It'll diff entire directory trees for you. It wires nicely into your version control system. You can do merge conflict resolution with it. You drag that bottom little handle up, and you get a third pane where you can do freeform editing if the back and forth isn't enough. Great tool. It's not the only one like this. Go shopping and find something that fits your brain. So those are long patches. Here's a little patch. Did this ever happen to your one-line patch? Yeah. People just felt like they had to say something, didn't they? So nitpicks, by definition, they're small things, but they can add up to a big effect. It's a continual pitter-patter of discouragement. It makes it hard to move fast. It discourages you from making small fixes. I've even left a team because of a nitpicking culture in part. And because it's a cultural problem, it needs a cultural solution. A lot of this stuff comes down to interpersonal stuff. Nitpicking often comes out of people groping for status, trying to justify their existence because they're insecure, or, oh, I found something wrong with that big fancy coder's code, so now I'm a big fancy coder. Like, really? And when do you get into second grade? So the solution to this is self-confidence. And I'm sorry to say that because self-confidence is tricky. It's almost a misnomer because you can't give yourself self-confidence. You can't go and sit in a room and like gin it up. But fortunately, it's easy to give other people self-confidence. And you should practice this in your team all the time. And I say team loosely. Whoever you're working for, you're on the same team. You're not working against each other. Be generous. Be frequent with your compliments. Give credit where credit is due, often and in public, right? Always give your compliments in public and give your critiques in private, and code review makes that really hard. But nobody's reading your review if not involved in it. Who wants to read extra reviews, right? What else we got? Yeah, remember what it costs to sit there in that chair per hour. Remember what they're paying you, what your client is paying you, and throttle accordingly, right? Is this really worth per hour? Is it worth that per hour for them to address it? And if you do all this stuff consistently, you'll see half of these nitpicks just evaporate. The other half of nitpicks have a semi-mechanical solution. Do you have a style guide for your project? You should have a style guide. And this lets you have every argument about style only once. These are great places to start. If you're not familiar with the Python enhancement proposals, these PEPs, Google PEP 8. It talks about white space and spelling and other such glorious things. PEP 257 builds on that. It talks about doc strings, the phrasing, the formatting. There's the Poku style guide that I like. Armin Ronacher and his buddies put that together, and it kind of fills in the holes where that leaves off. And then finally we have Sphinx formatting that I use for arguments, function arguments, which the rest of them don't talk about. And it's a nice terse syntax, and it brings with it the advantage that you can run the Sphinx documentation tool over your code afterwards and get nice docs out. Why not? Now, once you've chosen a style guide, you can automate the style checks using a linter. Who knows about linters? Everybody knows about linters? A lot of linters, okay. A popular linter for Python is Flake 8. It's fine. But be careful, because overzealous linters hurt the understandability of your code. Code is for humans, I would posit. And if you end up with these linter turds everywhere, and they get longer too, those are short ones, but I mean, they get kind of crazy. And if you have them all over the place, you need to turn that stuff down, because you have to read past it all the time. You think, oh, comment, it's valuable. No, it's for a computer. And your tools should serve you, not the other way around. With a healthy culture and mechanical support, turn to rigged so that it only enforces what everybody agrees on all the time, you should be able to spend your review time on things that matter, not little nitpicks. Here's another thing that stops up a lot of projects. Have you ever made a change to a function and then someone comes along and says, oh, can you fix the rest of that module while you're at it? It's been a mess for years. We have a joke at Mozilla, which is kind of a haha, only serious, that if you touch a particularly icky bit of code, you now own it forever. Try to keep that in the realm of haha, or there becomes a disincentive for fixing broken windows, right? And the idea, after all, is for the code base to be continually getting better, not being perfect. So yes, point out problems if it's not going to distract, but don't block an unrelated patch on them or distract the submitter by jumping into the middle of a relevant thing with an irrelevancy. And as I said, my rubric for merging to master is better? Great, merge it. And if you pull down the slides afterwards, these are actually links out to the C2 wiki, the original Words wiki, particularly good entry points. Any time wasted reading Words wiki is time not wasted. It is energizing to get your patches turned around quickly, and the opposite, to get them turned around very slowly. So even if you aren't able to be comprehensive right now, you can say, oh, I see this and this at a glance, looks pretty good otherwise, but I'll give you a full review in a couple of weeks. Or, I don't know when I'm going to be able to get to this, somebody else can feel free to jump in and finish it. Don't feel like you married a patch just because you said something on it. Also, because stuff falls out of working memory very fast and is expensive to load back in for the patch submitter, it's important to address it while they still remember what the heck they were thinking. The other time it's really important to turn around quickly is if you have to say no to somebody. If you have to say, this is philosophically against our project, or you need to rethink your approach, or there's a big thing going to land and just obliterate this in a minute, it's best to do that quickly so that they don't waste their time waiting around for Santa Claus or building more castles on a sandy foundation. So far I've been giving very specific cases, but now I want to talk about the more general emotional issues behind them. For instance, insecurity is probably my least favorite human emotion. I think it's caused wars. And it's just a kind of fear. That's all it is. What are we fearing when we're insecure? We're fearing half the time that people will find out that we're incompetent to some degree. Almost everybody feels this. It doesn't really go away. Imposter syndrome, that's what this is. I read a little long-form tweet earlier in the week by the author Neil Gaiman. He was at some kind of awards banquet for various things. And he ended up in the back of the room, and he hit it off with this other guy who was there because both of their first names were Neil. And the other guy was complaining to him. He said, I hate coming to these things. This room full of creative people who made all these wonderful things, and all I ever did was go where I was sent. It turned out the guy was Neil Armstrong. So if it's good enough for the first man on the moon, it's good enough for me, right? Realize nobody's judging you because they're worried about you judging them. They're all wrapped up in their own thing. They're not thinking about you at all, but they're not thinking about you at all. So, hey, you can just go ahead and do the best job you know how to do, worrying about nothing but your own concept of good work. Likewise, don't take it too hard when somebody does find something to critique in your code. Sometimes it's just having a fresh set of eyes. We all have that. Sometimes they genuinely know something you didn't, in which case you'll know it afterwards. So really, you win either way. Nobody should lose in code review. It's not a game. The final defense against insecurity is to notice when you're feeling a strong emotion. Notice it and name it. I'm feeling anger. I'm feeling disappointment. I'm feeling fear. why am I feeling that way is the next question. And sometimes you will not be able to answer that question. And it'll be because you skipped breakfast or because your dog is sick. In which case, it's pretty easy to dismiss these things sometimes. Oh, I don't know why I'm feeling like that. Sometimes it's because you actually do believe something that isn't true. Like, boy, it really matters that I can spell this variable the way that I want. Or it really matters that I win on my team for some value of win. And you can refute those, a little cognitive behavioral therapy. You can say, it's not true, and kind of let go of that stuff a bit. But emotions, once you feel them, take some time to clear. Have you ever had a dream that really hit you hard, and you're really sad in the dream, really afraid in the dream, and it kind of stuck with you the whole day long, and all day you felt yourself easily falling back into sadness or whatever the emotion was? There's this chemical persistence that happens with emotions. These chemical sponges, these neurotransmitters get out of the gate and they attach to things, and they literally take about 10 minutes to be re-uptaken and filed away. So when you find yourself feeling a strong emotion, and you don't want to speak out of it because I always make bad decisions when I'm doing that, it's a great time for lunch. That's what it means. It means it's time for lunch. It's time for a walk. Jump up and down, get the blood flowing, get those neurotransmitters back in the box, and you won't regret what you say. Speaking of emotions, one way I often feel is short on time. Anybody else? Nobody feels that way. We'll skip this one. So there will always be more to review than can be reviewed. There will always be more to do than can be done broadly in life in general. For a period of years, I would be viscerally repulsed by the pile of pull requests stacking up on my open source projects. As they would stack up, I would feel even worse and become even less likely to look at them, so they'd stack up even higher, and it just goes around and around and around. And finally, I had to come to peace with the fact that there's always going to be more to do than I can do. In fact, if we were to list out all the constructive things that we have the option of doing at any one time, it would be a couple of 100 hours of work. Even if you were to take a couple of weeks off, you would never catch up. I mean, maybe you get some of those things done, but they keep on coming in. As of 2 days ago, my list of things I could be doing was 161 items long. I keep a list. And so we only have 3 options open to us. We can lower our standards and probably still not get everything done. We can give up on sleep, or we can choose just to do the most important things. So then the only question is, what are the most important things? How do we determine that? 6 years ago, my coworker Chris wandered by my desk with a stack of these Getting Things Done books. And I said, hey, a free book. And I took it, and it sat on my shelf for 6 years. Because I thought, well, I don't need some business starchy guy talking to me about how to run my life and making an overcomplicated, strict system. I'm a creative free spirit, man, right? So I spent years feeling guilty instead, as those thoughts nagged at me. You should be doing this over here, not that. Oh, but you should be doing this over here. Oh, no. And that's how I spent my life. It's really obnoxious. So today, though, I have almost no open source guilt. I've been more responsive, as many contributor can tell you. And I've been at Inbox Zero for a year, both personally and professionally, and it's easy. Crazy pants. I can't tell you how many times I've tried before that. So I made a 1-slide version of this book. So it looks like a lot, but it's just a couple of branches. There's only a couple of decisions in this tree. Now, so when you're doing one thing and that nagging thought comes in, maybe you should be doing this other thing, instead of having it go around and around in your head and distract you, you write it down. You write on an index card, throw it in a bucket. Write it in a text file, throw it in a folder. Whatever you want to collect them in an inbox of some kind. Then go back to what you were doing, and you'll feel at peace, because you know it's not going to get forgotten. You don't have to rehearse it. Your brain knows that. Once a day, go through your bucket, and then push each index card down through the rest of this decision tree. So let's say, oh, maybe I should take a vacation to Europe this summer. Summer's coming up. Okay, write that down. Then later when we go and see it, we say, okay, well, let's see. Is it actionable? Yeah, I could totally start working on that. I could start researching, for example. So we go down that left-hand path. What's the next action? Maybe go to TripAdvisor and see what people like. All right, will that finish it? Well, no, I still have to book travel and do everything else. So that's actually a project. And a project is just a multi-step to do. And so what we do is we write, we plan a vacation to Europe at the top of the index card. And then once we do that action and it's empty, we know, well, is the vacation to Europe planned? No, okay, so now I know to add a new thing. It's a prompting to add a new thing later on. Let's take another example. I have a staircase in my house, and I have a filing cabinet at the top of the staircase, which is a stupid place for a filing cabinet. That's where it is. And so what actually happens is the stairs become the filing cabinet. And I would walk through my house, I work from home, I walk through the house and I see the stairs, and I see stuff on the stairs, and I say, I'm a useless person, I'm so futile. I can't even get the stuff off the stairs. How am I going to get any work done? And so, there's stuff on the stairs. Well, it goes into the inbox. Is it actionable? Yeah, okay. What is the action? Put the stuff off the stairs and file it. Will it take less than 2 minutes? Heck yeah, just do it right now. Don't even write on the index card. Is it 2 minutes? Yeah, just do it. And the stairs have been empty for the most part. I'm not perfect, but the stairs have mostly been empty. And when I pass the empty stairs, I think, I'm a useful person. I can get stuff off the stairs. Maybe I could even do something else. And it tends to cascades into the next thing, and you get rolling. So when you're like stuck in your work, do something stupid. Wash the dishes and see if it leads into the next thing. More likely than not, it will. If you take nothing else from this slide, if it's too starchy for you, just take the 2-minute rule. It is the best part of the book. It will handle 80% of your email by itself. It will assuage 80% of your guilt. And let's do the other example. Let's do the else. Okay, so we have maybe a PR to review, right? So we have this PR, and it's actionable, yeah. So what do I do with it? Well, I can delegate it to somebody else. I don't do this much. If you're a manager, you do it more. If you're married, you can delegate stuff to each other. You want to take the car for the oil change or not? Okay, I'll do it. Calendar, it can go on your calendar, but only if it is something that has to happen at that one time and can happen at no other time. I have a haircut appointment from noon to 1 on Wednesday. That's it. If I don't get it then, the appointment's up and it'll take me weeks to get another one. Otherwise, it goes onto the next list. And that's the one with 130 things on it. Those are all the things that I've decided to do, I decided they're worthy of doing, and I can choose to do it at any one time. I go through that every day, and I make kind of a little today list, like to do today. So, and the reason this whole thing works is by logarithms, which I'm getting a little ahead of myself. First, let me show you the other branch up top. Let's say we have a pull request to review that is not actionable, because it's a second round review. Sally made some code, I made some comments. Sally's going to go address those comments, and then we'll do the second round of review. But Sally's not done yet. So, in came the GitHub notification email that she's made some changes, but she's not done yet. So is it actionable? No. Well, is it something we put in reference, like my personal wiki or electronic filing cabinet for later? No, not really. That's unhappy. Let's see if that gets better. Is it something we should defer until another date? Yeah, quite possibly. Maybe I have my little computer system say, yeah, bother me about that in a week, and until then, I don't even want to see it. Or maybe it goes onto a someday list if I don't even know when I want to be notified about it. And I think of this as a someday maybe list. Like, someday maybe I'd like to go see the pyramids, but I'm not committed to it. So I'll just kind of throw it in that bin. And then what I will do is I will review it every week. That's the other piece of glue that holds this whole system together, the weekly review. Every week you look at your someday list, you pick things out of it and promote them to the next list. You look at the next list and you say, I don't really want to do that after all. That's no longer important anymore. And you push it back into the someday list. Or you look at things on the someday list and you say, I don't know what I was thinking there. That no longer applies. And it goes into the trash. And so what I was saying about logarithms, and we know about trees, right, as programmers. The reason this whole thing works is it's order log n. Every week we look at the someday list and we take some parts of that big list and put it on the next list. Every day we look at the next list, which is smaller, and take parts of it and put it on the today list. Now the today list is only 10 or 14 things long, and we can linearly scan that all day long without going out of our minds. In fact, if you have, I have maybe 200 items in here, but if you have 1,000, really you'd have to have about 10,000 to 100,000 to justify this, but you could add another level. I actually have a double someday, stuff that I don't review every week. I look at it once a month. Like, I don't need to decide about the pyramids every week. And that's really the whole book. That's really it. And as a result, I don't feel guilty anymore. I don't forget stuff anymore. And let me give you a little word about Inbox Zero and why. It's in to be at Inbox Zero, and I don't think people talk enough about why it's important. And it's really important because inboxes make a crappy UI for a to-do list, right? If you let your email box be a to-do list, it's a to-do list that somebody else sets the priorities on without thinking. It's always the latest thing. It's at the top. And is that the most important? Probably not. Because the email box is a nexus of lots of different things coming together, you end up doing this repeated linear scanning through it all the time. Is that an appointment I need? No, where was that appointment I needed? Is that appointment? It's not on your calendar. Where's that reference material I needed? Was it in the mailbox? It's not in your reference database where it should be. What should I do next? Let me look at my to-do list, look at my patch queue, let me look at the email box, and you end up scanning through each of these emails more than once. Why should you ever read an email more than once unless you enjoy reading it? You shouldn't. That stuff goes right into the inbox. I triage my email maybe once a day, and I do the same stuff with it. The appointments go on the calendar, the to-do things go on the next list, and the reference material goes into reference, and frankly, most of it goes into the trash, AKA archive. Oh, and the other thing, of course, is if you look at your email box, most of these things you can only see 1 or 2 dozen emails at the most at a time, and once something has fallen below the fold, no matter how many flags you've applied to it, you're never going to see that again. And the whole thing adds up to no longer dreading looking at your mailbox. Don't you hate that? You have something you're supposed to do. Like my mailbox was my papers on the stairs. Every time I would hit F9, bring my mail program forward, I'm like, ugh, that feels bad. Let me avoid that work. And usually not by doing something better, usually by reading Slashdot or something. Looking at an empty email window is a nice boost. Another outworking of this system is that I've taken my pull requests and I've batched those, kind of like a batched inbox. I used to have this continual pitter-patter of guilt as PRs hit my box, like, ooh, I should be working on Parsimonious, and they found a bug, and oh, I'm never going to get to that, and they'd stack up. So instead now what happens is I filter all those open source requests for all my projects into an open source requests mailbox, and I look at it once a week. I look at it every Wednesday. I have a repeating to-do, says, hey, look at that. And what do I do when I look at it? I push it through that whole diagram again, and I triage. And 80% of those mails get answered because they take less than 2 minutes. And people appreciate that. And my projects have picked up, even though I'm not really doing any more work. Champion committers help. I do have one of those on one of the projects. What other good things are there? So there are still things that are not 2 minutes. We have things that I dread so much that it takes me a month or 2 to get to them. And that hasn't changed. It was always going to take me a month to get to them, and it takes me a month now, but now I don't feel guilty about it. And the guilt doesn't do anybody any good. So why not just accept it? The other time we can feel short on time is when dealing with newcomers. And newcomers are great. We must embrace newcomers unless we plan to live forever and work on the same projects forever and ever. And who wants to do that, right? Yeah. So, but it's easy to feel like we're getting a bad return on investment bringing them up. So I don't spend much time on new contribs the moment they show up. I think that's fine. That's okay. Instead, my investment kind of parallels theirs. I think that's morally good. When they first show up, they're at level 1. They don't know where to start. Maybe they don't know the language, the Python or HTML or whatever it is. And so what do? I say, well, here's some docs. You can learn that. Here's a tutorial, maybe a book, whatever it is I like. Here's the list of good first bugs you might want to try after that. Maybe I think this one is particularly appropriate to your interests, and have fun. And off they go. Sometimes they don't come back, and that's fine. But the self-driven ones self-select, and they come roaring back with a patch. And it's nasty. And so what do? I fix the patch. I fix it for them. I put commits on top of theirs. I leave theirs there so they get their face in GitHub and get to feel good. But I fix it up, I write some tests, and I merge it in. I say, thank you so much, please come again. The second time they come back, they're at level 2. This time, I don't fix their stuff. I say, could you fix that? And I see this, and what do you think of this over here? And they fix it up, and they learn a little more version control. And they learn the code review skills. And maybe I'll write their tests for them, and then we merge it in. And then the third time, I require them to write the tests too, and then they're a full-fledged developer. We're always getting better, but at least they're doing all the things now. Trust. Trust is such an important component of the mutual respect that we need in order to do good code review. The trust bank is an idea that comes out of horse training, right? The more, if you feed the horse some sugar cubes, and then you have to hit the horse with the horsey thing later, the horse won't take it out on you. He'll be able to take it because he knows you mean well. He'll give you the benefit of the doubt. So the trouble is, it's easiest to build trust between humans face to face for whatever legacy reasons. So if, I don't know why that's funny, but it always is. So if you're a remote worker like I am, when you're in person with your team, if you're lucky enough to be, make a point of establishing good relations with them. Throw the frisbee around, have a meal, tell good-hearted jokes, and then when you have to critique each other later or talk on a low-bandwidth medium like IRC, you'll know how to take each other. You'll have built up some defense against offense, if you will. And then finally, you have these other feelings you don't know what to do with. Like, when I look at a patch, and I don't like it, it feels too icky to merge, but I can't really articulate why. At least I can just fall back to articulating my emotions. I'm worried about this, especially right here. I can't really put my finger on it, but something about this destination param and the global write lock, and I feel like it's messy. What do you think? You don't have to be definitive, decisive, or authoritative all the time. You just treat everybody like adults and invite them into the conversation, and you dialogue, and hopefully you come to a better solution than you would have yourself, just kind of just sitting there ignoring it. Remember, you are never alone in a code review. Take advantage of that fact. So next time you are in a code review, keep these principles handy and let them help you to build your projects and build yourself and build up each other. Thank you so much.
We have time for a few questions. If you come up to the microphones, if you have any.
So if the people we're reviewing feel insecure, how do we make our comments sound sincere as opposed to, this is something I learned in a talk, and so I'm doing it right now? Does that question make sense?
I mean, always be sincere. Never, what is the word? Pedantic is not it. Never talk down to people. I mean, always be honest, but always be kind as well. So that's the knife edge you want to walk. These are mechanistic things for giving you ideas if you're just like, I'm busy, I can't think of a way to do this, and the alternative is to be mean. The question mark is my favorite. Like rephrasing as a question, that doesn't make it any less sincere, but it's often said. Any others?
Yeah. How do you deal with nitpickers on your team? If
with
somebody
what?
is nitpickers?
Well, I don't have the problem of nitpickers right now because I'm kind of a lone gun lately, and the people in my projects don't seem to be nitpickers. But what immediately comes to mind is I can say, is this something we need to block the patch on, or can we push it ahead into a different, can we file it as a bug and come back to it later? Or we can say, is there a way we can automate this so that you don't have to pick that nit next time? But really, I think that if those don't work, the base thing is to establish a good relationship with the nitpicker. Take the nitpicker to lunch. Not just one-on-one because it's kind of weird, but at least go with 3 people and build a friendship so that then you can say, really? Really? And they give you the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, generally, if you have to argue with somebody, argue out loud, because as soon as you write it down, it gets much, much louder.
Hi, thank you for your talk. I really liked the sort of managing your workflow, and I was curious what tools you use to do that.
Yeah, I use the Things app on my iPhone and Mac. I use it because it's not cross-platform. Other good stuff is the Todoist. I think you have to rent that one. There's To-Do, number To-Do. I think those are some of them are web-based. Those are both good though. You can totally do it on paper. All that's in that whole flow chart, that's just lists. It's just lists.
Have you ever used Trello?
I have not used Trello. Yeah. I'm thinking of doing like a getting things done open space later on. So if come up afterwards, find me, I'll getting it out of the way. And if enough people come up, I'll actually do it.
Thank you very much for the talk. A lot of this stuff seems to apply in teams, but if you're a team of 1, how would you adapt this to
Do you review yourself?
Yeah. Do I personally know?
Yeah. Tell me how you how does code review apply to your lack of a team?
I mean, I work in a team, right? But like, I can imagine if you're a solo developer working on your own project, maybe you have a hobby thing that you're doing in your off time, right? How do you apply this like to yourself?
Well, I mean, what happens to me, so I was a solo on all of my open source projects that I started by myself, and then people came in later and did a better job than I did. What you don't get if you don't get contributions, and I do, you do get support requests. And you can treat them with many of these same tools, the same kind of time-saving workflows, the same kind of interpersonal stuff, because they're people too. Even users are people. I know it's a contentious issue, but I'm going to stand by that.
All right, that's all we have time for. Thank the speaker again, please.
Thank you, Erik.
So next up, it's going to be Erik Rose, and he's going to tell us about constructive code reviews. Please welcome him warmly.
Welcome. Thanks so much for filling this big room. This is going to be about how to run code reviews so you build the best possible product, but also build people up and build yourself up while doing it. So code review used to have this connotation of sitting in a stale conference room, pointing at stale code with stale long sticks. Modern code review is still stale, but generally asynchronous and web-based, and so we have all these advantages with it. You can take your time and do it whenever you want, but then there are still some disadvantages. Like we lose the ability to build rapport face-to-face. I'm going to offer some suggestions on how to overcome this and other disadvantages and get the most out of a very valuable practice. I've been through hundreds of code reviews, both giving and receiving. I've worked my whole career almost in open source of various kinds, where reviews or not, we never stop arguing about code. You may recognize my name from such open source libraries as Parsimonious, More Itertools, Blessings. We're always arguing about code on those things. I've been with Mozilla for 7 years, where everything we do is open source and goes through code review. So I've also spent a lot of time mentoring interns, junior devs, showing them how to review and be reviewed. The goals of a good review are 3. Build a good product, and this is, code review kind of fills the role of ensuring that the thing works beyond what our tools and our tests can tell us by rubbing a second brain over it. Rubbing a second brain over it also ensures that the code is understandable to people who didn't write it. Second, we build excellent programmers. We spread knowledge of the code base, like, well, you re-implemented this, but there's a routine over here in the utils. This is particularly true of open source. Even when it comes with a paycheck, we are an intrinsically motivated crowd, especially the kinds of people who come to PyCon, right, and kind of open source people. I make my living doing this, but I don't get paid to program. I see it as I get paid so I can spend my time programming rather than getting money some other way. Now, the creative spark is a fragile thing, and it's all too easy to snuff it out in people. If you're lucky, and this is the best case, they'll quit. If you're unlucky, they will hang around, and they'll write bad code. So how do we preserve or even fan brighter this creative spark? We do it through equal parts truth and kindness. You'll see that everything I say today is going to be motivated by one or the other of these, because after all, the thing has to run on a machine made of metal. Can't argue with reality. But on the other hand, we're all these squishy, emotional beings, and we need a lift sometimes. So let's start with some truth. The clarity of explanation. As you're looking through the code, what did you find? This comment is self-descriptive. A better comment would have actually explained what happened. Okay, well, like this could happen temporarily, and it moves to the next thing, and it goes through this routine, and it gets caught up in the gears, and we ended up with a use after free, and we could have a security hole. Nah. Specific is good, but not sufficient. We also need to be durable. Our comments need to be durable over time and over code base change. So if I were to have a link in there and point off to some thing on the master branch, and we did this review a month later, the master branch has moved, man. Those lines of code, they're all over the place now. People have added, people have deleted. If you're going to link to a specific commit. We also have to be durable over what time they're going to be looking at it. I mean, so that month has gone by again. If my comment said, hey, remember when we talked about yesterday? Yeah, do that. Not helpful. Remember yesterday when we talked about it in the chat room? Maybe also not helpful. Not everybody keeps chat logs. Say what you said in the chat room. Remember we talked about that thing in the free after whatever, and then it would be good. In fact, heck, if somebody comes back to the module that does it, we spread raw competence, like, well, hey, did you know about generator expressions? We can make this lazy and not concretize the whole list all at once. And we spread the love of the craft of programming. I mean, really, what an amazing privilege it is to program. What could be more creative than not only authoring a thing like an author of human text does, but having it run with a life of its own? Wow! I want to spread that joy to as many people as possible. And then third, in code review, you build yourself. Whether it's working with volunteer contribs, users, clients, or paying customers, it's easy for their demands to build up and make you feel like you don't control your own time, like you're just guilty all the time. I should really be working harder and harder. And I'll give you some tools to avoid burning out on that. Now, of course, the opposite of these good things can happen. You can waste time nitpicking, you can tear people down, or you can burn yourself out through failure to set and enforce personal boundaries. And this is a real problem because coding is creative work, and creative work is powered by enthusiasm.